He'll never know. He will never know. My lips are sealed. Um, I, I'm from Cleveland. Spent my entire life looking for the Browns' victory, um, and I don't think the Browns have ever had a more disappointing game that Detroit had yesterday. If you're a
No.
Detroit fan, you thought that game was yours. I thought that game was theirs. I feel terrible for our office in Detroit, who obviously are huge Lions fans. But hey, we've got a pretty good Super Bowl coming up. You can't get much closer in a line that's won. That's probably going to close a pick 'em. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
And of course, I will be breaking down the Super Bowl with my big game breakdown today. For some reason, Prez likes to bury the lead every day.
That's
but yeah,
the
we'll be
lead,
doing a full Super
everyone.
Bowl analysis. We'll be doing a full Super Bowl analysis on this show before all said and done. There's a bet you can make today that I don't think you'll be able to make tomorrow when it comes to this particular big game. Bry, we'll have plenty of football talk on today's show, but we're going to open up with some hoops talk. And obviously we have national TV action tonight. Duke on the hardwoods on a relatively light card, being that there's two games on the college basketball board today. Duke right now 3-point road favorites at Virginia Tech. Total sitting 146 and a half. What do you want to do with the Hokies and the Blue Devils?
Yeah, the schedule is very limited today. I'm passing for clients. These are the two biggest games on the board. There's two regular games, regular board games in college basketball, and then a bunch of the additional board. But I think this has got the most intrigue, Duke and Virginia Tech. Blue Devils have won 11 to 12 games as of late, but had to survive a 72-71 home game against Clemson last time out, a game that a little bit of controversy for a foul late in that game. And while the final scores show that this team is red hot, the ATS numbers have them failing to cover 4 straight. Because of those wins and not covers, I think that gives us a little bit of an advantage here for the home dog. Duke's 15-4 on the season, 6-2 in ACC play. They've got a 54.9 offensive effective field goal percentage, 49.5 defensive. I take a look at Virginia Tech, very similar actually, 13-7 on the year from a record 5-4 in conference action, but they're very good at home, 9-1 straight up in this court, and they've been home 3 straight contests, so there's been no traveling involved where Duke has to travel to get here, obviously, and the Hokies should be in a pretty good situation here. Their effective field goal percentage is 54.4, defense 49.0, so very similar to Duke in that regard. And unlike the Blue Devils, this team has covered 3 straight games. So we're getting a team starting to peak here against a team that I think is starting to regress. And if you take a look at the Hokies here against Duke, they've covered 5 out of the last 6 at home in this series. We're catching them +3, 3.5 here. That to me is a little bit of a bargain. I would have made this line probably about 1.5. So give me Virginia Tech as a home dog against Duke.
So we've seen Duke fail to cover some big numbers of late. Minus 14.5 at Notre Dame, they only win by 8. Minus 17.5 against Georgia Tech, they only win by 5. Minus 14.5 against Louisville, they only win by 14. And obviously last time out, didn't sniff a point spread cover in that controversial finish against Clemson. But those are all much bigger point spread ranges than what we're seeing here. Do you worry at all about this is a game where it's not necessarily win and cover, but at -3, it's much more likely to see a win and cover than the point spreads that Duke's been laying against some of these foes in recent weeks. So does that worry you at all that we're looking at such a cheap price here that if Duke wins, they're much more likely to cover the number? They have been able to win these games on the road.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off there. It's a cheap price because of what Virginia Tech has done at home. Very good at home. As I mentioned, only lost to 1 game all season, and they've played Duke very well here, so which is why the game is close. But yeah, I understand your point. But Duke, I had Duke unfortunately against Clemson the other day, and that was a game. It looked like they were going to start pulling away, and every time they tried to pull away, Clemson came back once again. So yeah, I think I've actually been on Duke the last two of the last 3 games and lost them. So it's a situation where I've been backing the spots for Duke, and they still can't get the good covers. That's even more reason for myself to want to go against them here, as I found value on those 2 games and still didn't get there for me. So we will play Virginia Tech, but that is always a concern. And Duke's got the pedigree. I mean, they're a very good road team also, and they're also obviously playing one of the toughest home environments. But they've had trouble in this building, so we'll take it here with Virginia Tech.
Bryan Leonard joining us, everyone. Bryan, let's turn our attention to NHL, a sport that you are so good at. We got one game going tonight. It's going to be a short slate throughout the week. Ottawa is playing Nashville. Ottawa just lost 2 in a row in a terrible, terrible defensive effort against the New York Rangers. They lost 7-2 to that game. And well, no shame in allowing Edmonton to beat you. Nashville just lost to them. Edmonton 1 game away from tying the record, but they have lost 3 of their last 4. So really, look, Nashville is in the playoff hunt, but I look at these teams as 2 bottom feeders playing against each other. It's basically a pick 'em. How do we bet it?
I think Nashville's a little bit better here. I faded Nashville as a 4% play last time out. I didn't take Edmonton. I took Nashville under the 2.5 goals because you go back and look at Edmonton. They're winning not only because the offense has been pretty good, the defense and the goaltending has been terrific for the Oilers. And that's something they didn't have earlier in the season. So if that defense continues to do well for the Oilers, they're going to be a tough team to beat. A quick look at how these teams have played the last 10 games on 5-on-5 play. Nashville has a goal percentage of 50.00. Expected goal percentage of 51.59. Predators games have been lower scoring as of late in 5-on-5 play. Only 30 goals have been scored in the first 10. And in fact, if you like Ottawa, I think there's some correlation with the over here. If you like Nashville, some correlation on the under. Ottawa, as opposed to the 30 goals being scored in the last 10 on 5-on-5 play, they've had 51. So they prefer to play the fast-paced, higher-scoring games. Ottawa's goal percentage, the last 10, 47.06, expected 56.40. So they're playing a little bit less than their projected numbers offensively for Ottawa, but they're still getting those 51 goals. So it tells you how poor the defense has been. Looking closer out of those 10 games, though, we see Nashville played 7 of those 10 games on the road. They're a very good road team. Nashville has won 11 of 16 away from home and just faced, as you mentioned, the extremely hot Edmonton Oilers. Ottawa, on the other hand, played 7 of 10 games in this building. So their numbers that I'm quoting are mostly home games, whereas Nashville is mostly road games. Nashville's the better team, right? I've watched this team play. I've been pretty good at being able to pick out when they play. Ottawa is one of those teams, since they played out of the country and out of North America early this season, they're behind in playing games. So they've only played 45 games right now, where some other teams have actually played 50. And when you take a look at what Ottawa's stats have been, even though they played the vast majority of their games at home, you hit it on the head. They're not one of the better teams in the league. In fact, they're one of the bottom feeders in my regard. So if I could take a Nashville team who's played this well on the road, and they've been really good on the road and winning these games, like I said, 11 of the last 16 winners, I'll take Nashville in a pick'em game. I thought that was a pretty easy victory in NHL, considering we've only got one game to choose from today.
Look at Nashville in NHL action on Monday night, says Bryan Leonard. Of course, it's Fill Your Cart Monday at WagerTalk and SportsMemo.com today. You can take 25% off everything you can fit in your cart. No exceptions. Just use coupon code CART25 as often as you'd like until the clock strikes midnight tonight. Again, coupon code CART25 at checkout will get you 25% off everything, anything and everything at WagerTalk and SportsMemo.com. What do you have going for the clients today on this Fill Your Cart Monday, Bryan?
Yeah, as I said, I've got nothing strong enough. I went through every game, couldn't find anything worthy of value. Nashville's, to me, is the best play on the board, but it's not quite there enough to get it for a client. So you're getting the best 2 plays that I've given out as free plays today. No paid plays for my clients today.
Bryan Leonard, everyone. Thanks for joining us, Bryan. Teddy, we're going to talk Super Bowl. I'm going to self-promote, as I do. But first, are we doing the B6 or the what did bettors learn?
where if you can scroll up, I put in exactly what I'm going to talk about every night.
Take a chance to piss on the Prez. Just get on with it.
When the Prez doesn't actually look at the show notes, then Prez gets pissed on. Let's talk about the Super Bowl. Let's talk about the Super Bowl opener. Lawrence, you're more than welcome to join the discussion. We had look-ahead lines last week for all four potential matchup. 49ers -2 versus Ravens, and Baltimore took a bunch of money in that matchup. That ended up being closing as pick'em at a lot of places. 49ers -3 versus the Chiefs was the look-ahead line for that ball game. And one book actually opened at -3. I was stunned because when we look at how the playoffs played out, San Fran -3 last week versus KC. Yeah, that was a look-ahead line. But after when the dust settles after the games, you're like, there's no way you can put San Fran -3 in this contest. I've seen bookmakers lose their job because of bad Super Bowl lines, especially scenarios where they're already in a bad position and trying to dig their way out of it. It's happened more than once in Las Vegas, certainly happened in the global community. Bookmakers sometimes take shots at this time of year. So the book that opened at -3, that was a flat-out bad line. All right, San Fran 0-2 against the spread in the postseason. They were not necessarily the better team in either game. They blew the cover. The defense failed in both contests. They blew the cover at the end of the Lions game. And all of a sudden, you start looking at San Francisco from about the beginning of December, and you go, it's not all that impressive. This team might have peaked in November. Purdy looked like a seventh rounder at times throughout the first two playoff games. Those were at home. They got every break. The Lions, a fourth down fails. The Campbell, a second and goal from the one, finds a way to screw it up and blow a timeout. The 51-yard completion off the defender's face mask. You name it. So you put all that together, San Fran's not going to be the attractive choice. San Fran's not going to take the early money. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, 3-0 against the spread in the playoffs. They won the Super Bowl last year. They beat tough competition on the road. Mahomes and Reed, Belichick. Mahomes and Reed are playing to be the modern-day Belichick and Brady right now. Of course Kansas City was going to take the money. It couldn't open 3. I was surprised it opened 2.5. And you know me, Prez, I'm talking to people last night. Lots of people. Super Bowl coming out night. My phone's blowing up. How many of them said they were betting San Fran? 0. 0. Not at that number. The line couldn't hold. It didn't. It hasn't. All the early money has come for Kansas City. We're looking at 147.5 as a prevailing number as we speak. A little bit later in the show, I'll give you a thought on how to bet this game if you're going to bet it today. But right now, let's send it back to Lawrence.
Teddy covers. Listen, I just, it's a betting show and we're supposed to talk betting, but at the end of the day, I want to look at those two games real quick from just, a fan better, whatever perspective.
Sure.
I want to start by saying that I had a good day for my clients in NFL. I had a good weekend. I went 5-2 in NFL. Sure. I lost George Kittle over in receiving yards, and I lost on the Baltimore Ravens. But I did have Detroit and the over and 3 winning prop bets. I had Jared Goff over 261 in yards. That last drive was massive for me. He got to 269 and we got the backdoor cover. But put all that aside, yesterday was insane. I mean, it started with Baltimore. Lamar didn't show up. The Baltimore play calling was horrendous. Horrendous. We never saw them get going in the run game. Lamar did not look like he could throw the ball well. Zay Flowers had 2 ridiculous game-changing brain cramps. It was unbelievable. And I sat there and I thought, man, we're not going to see a game this crazy again for a while. 5 minutes later, that ended. What went down in Detroit and San Fran was for the ages. You read what's going on in Twitter and listen to the talking heads. The amount of abuse Dan Campbell is getting and will continue to get throughout the summer will be of epic proportion and completely well-deserved. He's my favorite coach. I love people who wear emotions on their sleeves. I could not believe that he didn't kick that first field goal. And the second one was potentially up there with Bill Carroll. Let's not run Marshawn Lynch. That bad a call. I think it might be in the top 2 or 3 worst calls I've ever seen in my life. I want to say if the Ford family is listening, and I know they usually do listen to our show, if you're about to lose Ben Johnson, lose Dan Campbell. That's my take on where Detroit should go. I would take Ben Johnson's. That offense is unstoppable. I think it's time. Remove Dan, put Ben in place. Johnny Detroit, I'm deeply sorry for your loss. You must have been absolutely freaking gutted.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why any Lions fan would be gutted. They cashed. They covered. If you want to be a fan.
I said fan.
If you want to be a fan. How do I say this politely? I can't say it politely. Fans are losers, all right? You cannot win as a fan. All you do is watch your team lose a heartbreaking game year after year. Look, I just won with Michigan, all right? Michigan fan, yay! You know, for the previous 27 years, every year ended miserably. Every one of them. And I got one. Lions might get one in their lifetime. But as a fan, you're stuck, locked into the team, locked into the owner, locked into all the bad decisions they make. It's horrible. I couldn't imagine a worse fate for anyone than trying to be a fan of a bad team like the Lions. I'm sorry if you're a fan of that team. Stop being a fan and start betting.
Okay. I mean, that's a totally reasonable take. You and I we've had this conversation many times.
All they're going to do is break your heart.
I get it. I respect that. Teddy, you mentioned the fill your cart promo. Guys, if you put anything in your shopping cart today up until midnight PST, you get 25% off. And on Friday, I begged you guys to play me. Like I stopped. Teddy rolled his eyes. Teddy was like, oh God, he's self-promoting again. Here we go. I pleaded with you guys to buy my plays. I killed it. I crushed it. I had a 7-2 Sunday. I had a 3-2 Saturday. I am now on a 13-3 college basketball run. I'm up profits in college basketball, NBA, and NHL. What more can a human being do? What more? So head over to WagerTalk, fill your cart with me, and get 25% off. And as a bonus, I'll throw you a free Bryan Leonard play. I have back end. I can look and tell you what he's playing. I'll throw it in one day. No problem. Bryan Leonard joining us. Brian Power. Brian Power. We're Bryan. We got 2 Bryans and an Andrew today. Bryan, where are you at with what we've spoken about so far?
Glad we're all on the same page here on Monday, Prez. I don't think you would like my answer if I talked about Dan Campbell, to be honest with you. I actually completely disagree with what you said.
Oh, so you think Dan Campbell was right to go for it both times?
I think, as they often are, the Twitter mob completely overreacted, and
forget the Twitter mob, Bryan.
All right, here's the deal. Okay, here's the deal.
You think that down by 3 with 7 to go in the game, you go for it and not try tie. You legitimately think that way.
You're telling me it's guaranteed their indoor kicker's going to hit a 47-yard field goal a week after Tyler Bass booked it?
Anything. So you would go for it.
I had no problem with the decision. The problem is, as I talked about this with Kelly on her pregame show on Wednesday, the big problem in these situations when people get upset about going for it on fourth downs, going for two, it's often the play call, not the decision itself, that is poor. And I think you could argue, based on the fact they could have gone up 3 scores, that first one that he passed on, the first field goal attempt, maybe that was a little too risky. Although that was actually a great play call. The guy just dropped it. It wasn't the fourth. Here's what the problem is, back to my original point. The problem is the people who take umbrage with going for it on fourth, going for two, they just assume the conservative approach is automatically going to work, and it's not. For the record,
Bryan, you're
as
killing
Teddy
me.
alluded to, it didn't cost them the cover at all. It did not cost the Lions the cover at all, because if they would have kicked it.
Bryan, there are Lion fans, and you're killing me, dude. You have San Fran. They go into the dressing room, and they're like, we are getting slaughtered. Nothing is going right. We're going to come out, and we're going to score a touchdown and get this game going. They march down the field. They get a field goal. What does Detroit do? They go down the field. They get another field goal, except they don't. And they say to San Fran, you're not getting back into this game. Detroit puts their foot on San Fran's throat if they kick a field goal in the third quarter. Bryan, we got to move on. I just want you to know it's totally okay to be wrong. It's totally, it is a cross that I have to bear around people regularly.
The Lions got the NFC Championship game thanks to Dan Campbell. That's the way he coaches. And two, I could argue they didn't put their foot on the throat. They didn't put their foot on the throat at the end of the first half when they kicked the field goal, and they could have gone for a touchdown goal
Teddy,
to go.
I got one
no
last
one
thing.
talks about that.
I got one last thing to say, Teddy, and then you can take over. Last night I said to Vivian, Dan Campbell would be a terrible poker player. And the reason for that is exactly what Bryan said. That's how I built my chip stack. I built my chip stack by calling all ins with ace queen. I know that we're on the bubble. I know. But hey, I'm incapable of changing gears. If you can't change gears, you suck. Teddy, get some actionable info. And for the record, I won.
I'm still
in Detroit.
Yeah, and for you to say Dan Campbell shouldn't come back, when you look at the Lions franchise the last 50 years,
he's my favorite
and Dan Campbell has been the ray of hope for that.
That's not what I said.
You said
I said I'd rather lose Dan Campbell. I said I'd rather lose Dan Campbell than Ben Johnson. If I had to choose between those two, I would rather lose Dan than Ben. I love Dan Campbell as a coach, and I do think that at some point he will realize that you have to change gears. Okay.
Let's talk about the ESPN showdown tonight. Houston and Texas, the 18-2 Cougars, 4.5-point road favorites in some books, -5 at others. Total sitting in the 130.5 range. There is a prominent 131 in the global community. What are you looking at for the Longhorns and the Cougs ESPN showdown Monday night?
Yeah, we'll try to get through this one quickly here. I know we're probably running short on time after that back and forth. I like the under here, Teddy. Okay. Oh, good. Then I'll go normal. I like the under here. And if you're betting the under, obviously you want a good defensive team. Well, as you know, Teddy, as you know, Prez, there's no one better defensively in the country than Houston. Number 1 in adjusted efficiency over at Ken Palm. Number 1 in points allowed per game in the country. Number 1 in field goal percentage allowed. Only 4 teams all season have scored more than 60 against Houston. And even better, if you're an under better, guess what the Cougars do? They play slow. 350 in adjusted tempo. That's bottom 15, obviously bottom 13, actually, to be exact. And with Texas, okay, people are going to look at their scoring average for the season at 76.8 points per game. I think that's misleading because they really were putting up a lot of big point totals in the non-conference. They've been held below that average 9 of the past 10 games overall, and they also play slow outside the top 250 in adjusted tempo. So I'm not expecting a ton of points from Texas tonight. This promises to be a half-court game. Both these teams can rebound. Really, the under is dependent on the Horns slowing Houston's offense down, and I think they can do that. Why do I think they can do that? Well, if you saw Texas over the weekend, you might be scratching your head thinking why can do it, because BYU torched them. But that was a road game. Remember, 2 games ago, Texas held a good Oklahoma team to just 60. And in 4 true road games this season, Teddy, Houston averaging just 65.3 points per game. It's a low number. I know it's come up since I entered it in, told you guys I'd be talking about it. But 6 of the 7 games this season with a total of 120 to 129.5 for Houston actually went under the total. I actually like the way that this moved because we're getting a few extra points now. I am on the under in Houston and Texas.
So, I mean, Houston's been an under machine all season, 14-6 to the under in their first 20 ball games. They've been playing Houston unders who've done very well so far in 2023/24. But if you're playing the Longhorns under of late, you'd mentioned the Oklahoma game. And I watched that game. Oklahoma just shot bricks. I mean, they just could not hit a basket. With the exception of that game, Texas hasn't played an under, in January? I think it's 6-1 to the over in their last 7, I believe it is. It was January 1st was their only previous under. And every one of those was totaled higher than this one. So certainly Houston's been an under team. Texas has been an over team. Does that concern you at all? Playing the under tonight, especially with some of the sharper books being the ones that have the little that are giving us those signals that say that there's some sharp money on the over in this one.
Yeah, for sure, Teddy. And I had a feeling, you look at the numbers too that Texas was going over. They're obviously larger than this one. My answer to what you just said is very simple. None of those 7 teams that Texas just faced are Houston. And I think Houston, with the combination of their incredible defense and slow pace, I think that wins out here when it comes to the total. And Houston will win too.
Brian Power, I'm getting abused by Pobody's Nerfict. He writes, why have a guest on, Prez, if you won't let them get their opinions across? So firstly, he got his opinion across. He's wrong, but he got his opinion across. I argued with him, but he still got his opinion across. Brian, did you feel like you got your opinion across? Oh, who cares? Let's get on to the next game. Nets +1 versus Jazz. How you betting this one, brother?
Yes, I did feel I got my opinion across, Prez, and we'll just agree to disagree. I think people got that right off the rip. All right, Utah and Brooklyn. I think Teddy and I might agree to disagree on this one too, because we are definitely going against the respective results from the last month or so. When I'm making this play. Got Utah, they're 17-7 last 24. Brooklyn, 5-17 last 22. That's straight up. But I think there's signs that these teams will be reverting back to their respective means. Jazz lost 3 of 5. The 2 wins, who are they against? Bottom feeders, Washington and Charlotte. Obviously, 2 of the absolute dirt worst teams in the league. The Nets just picked up a nice home win by 2 over Houston. Finally, a close result going their way, Teddy. It has been insane, the late game meltdowns we've seen with the Nets. They had one of the league's hottest teams, the Clippers, down by 28 last week, and they lost. What was it, a 22-0 run to end that game? You don't see that very often. They led the Knicks, another one of the league's hottest teams, by 9 in the 4th quarter. Somehow they lose that one. And then they faced Minnesota, who's got the best record in the West, lost by 2. Obviously, we need Brooklyn to win here. But I'm looking at this. Utah is a drop in class from the previous Brooklyn opponents. And I think it's time to buy low on Brooklyn. The Houston team Brooklyn just beat, I have rated better than the Jazz. These 2 teams, honestly, I have rated fairly even over the full course of the year. So I'm happy now it's at +1. I like that. And you look at the previous meeting, okay, between these 2 teams, I believe it was last month. Brooklyn was actually laying points in Utah. Obviously, odds makers had to adjust, Teddy, based on what we've seen over the last month since that, and the Jazz won the first meeting. But this is the Jazz's 5th straight game on the highway. Situationally, I think it's a good time to fade them. I will roll with Brooklyn. My goodness, they can't go the rest of the season without winning back-to-back games, can they?
Well, last time they won back-to-back games, I believe, was the first week of December. It's certainly been a while.
Yeah.
I mean, the Nets did everything they possibly could to lose to Houston. They built a big lead and let it all fall apart at the end. And it was fortuitous for them to come away with that victory on Saturday. They should get Ben Simmons back in the lineup tonight, which of course means adjusting rotations and all of that, which can be problematic for teams. But more than any other factor, let's talk about the Nets' inability, because again, they did everything they could to lose to Houston the other night, found a way to escape with a win. They're 0-6 against the spread, their last 6 tries off a win since the beginning of December. So it's like the last 8 weeks they haven't been able to bounce back off a win. And there's something like in games decided by 5 points or less, they're like 5-13 their last 18. I mean, they've just been awful at finding ways to win these tight games. Whereas Utah has been pretty good at winning some of these games. Yeah, I guess I am counteracting you. I'm going back for the whole analysis the other way, because obviously I've got the Jazz as a free play for my clients today. But you said something interesting. You said that you got that the Nets just beat Houston, and you have the Houston better than Utah. I've got Utah a field goal better than Houston, at least. I'm surprised that we have such differing numbers at this stage of the season. The Jazz have played great ball for the last 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, I'm just not a believer in the Jazz. I think they're a below-average basketball team. I would be surprised if they even made the play-in round in the Western Conference. Obviously, the West more loaded than the East, as it typically is. I'm just, they caught me by surprise. I believe, actually, that when we did that little thing for you, Teddy, on the program, where I got to come on and question you the day you were the $2 capper. And granted, that was a while ago, okay, and a lot has changed. But you talked about the idea of, like, Utah, how they shouldn't be laying that many points to anybody. I just give them credit for what they've done over the last month. I just think when all is said and done, I don't think they're as good as they've played over the last month. And again, something that I think is really key, it's their 5th straight road game. Look at who they've started to slow down. They've lost 3 of 5. The 2 wins were against Washington and Charlotte, who I think you and I would both agree are in the bottom 4 of the NBA. So I just think situationally, it's a time to fade the Jazz, and then just from straight regression theory, I will back Brooklyn on their long journey to the middle, in the words of the late, great Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Bryan Power, man, dude, I hope I don't care. Andrew McInnis still to come. Bryan, actions speak louder than words, bro. You are one of 5 people that are on the show every single week. Why? Because you're an amazing handicapper, you got great hair, and you are cool as shit. Plus, I genuinely like you. What do you got to promote?
Well, that was very nice, Prez. I appreciate that. Look, the weekend was not my finest hour. There's no running from it. I'm always honest with the people when I come on the show. We had been doing great, going all the way back to early November. We had avoided the dreaded back-to-back poor days during that time. It happened to us over the weekend, but we're going to bounce back. And you see the Fill Your Cart Monday deal up there. That actually applies to what is already an incredible deal that's available at my page. You can get every play I release from now through the Super Bowl, and every play Mark Zinno, the newest WagerTalk handicapper, good friend of mine, great guy. He's been on the show before, very smart guy. You can get all of his plays for just $199. Both of us, 2 handicappers for $199 all the way through the Super Bowl. And you can actually, and the 25% deal applies to that already massively discounted price. That is absolutely the way to go if you're looking to lock in long-term over the next 2 weeks. I do have a soccer play this afternoon available to all access clients. Prez, I know you are waiting with bated breath how that turns out.
Oh, yes, dude, and I've already seen the play. Bryan Power, everyone. Teddy covers. You've got a big game breakdown on the Super Bowl. Let's hear it.
Absolutely. Monday morning, you better believe we're ready to talk Super Bowl action right here in Las Vegas. Right now, look at the WagerTalk Live odds screen. San Francisco -1, pretty much across the board, total sitting at 47.5. And look, I'm not a guy that bets teasers every week, like some of the guys on WagerTalk are. And some of them are really good at it. But that said, this one stands out like a sore thumb. And make sure if you're betting the Super Bowl teaser, 6 points -130 or less, 6.5 points -140 or less. Don't be stupid with the teasers. Tides win cards are great. Tides push cards are okay. Whatever you do, don't play a ties lose. Okay? You'll see those around town here in Las Vegas, Super Bowl week. But you play basic teaser strategy here. Tease the Chiefs across the key numbers of 3, 4, 6, and 7, up to 7.5. They're defending champs. We don't expect them to go down without a fight. We all know Mahomes, 10-1-1 against the spread as a dog. And the only loss game, I think they were plus 2.5. They lost by 4. So we're not seeing Kansas City. I can't picture a scenario where the Chiefs get blown out in this game, where they're non-competitive in defeat. Now, I don't like teasing totals. Basically never. But in this game, if you're going to tease KC up, you're going to have to do something with the total. And I think teasing the total down is the way to go. 47.5, you can get it down to 41 with the 6.5-point teaser. 41.5 is a no-brainer. And again, you're getting 42, 43, 44, 45, 47. Key numbers. That's as good a teaser spread as you're going to find from 47.5 down to 41.5/41. So we've seen all the money for Kansas City so far. I would not be surprised if we see additional money for Kansas City over the course of the next day. That being said, I do think the Niners may hold as favorites here, given the full season. But again, there's urgency here. It was obviously 3/2.5/2 last night, 1.5 today. The ones. And the teaser math doesn't work if this line is at pick'em. So if you're going to do it, find a +1 right now and make your teaser. One last note before I let you go. This is one that Ralph Michaels passed along to me last year, cashed again last year. As the props come out, look for this one. Team to score last wins the game. It was -200 at the open last year. It's cashed 14 straight Super Bowls. Team to score last wins the game. Lawrence, and in a close game like this one, that's certainly what we expect. Back to you, my friend.
That was incredible, Teddy. Nicely done. Guys, we still have 7 minutes left to go. Andrew McInnis joining us. But Teddy, real quick, you're doing the opening line report today?
Of course. We're going to talk about this line. We're going to talk about, it's not going to be a 45-minute show today, but we'll absolutely do an opening line report. And one of the good things about a day like today is I have time to answer questions in the chat. So you got questions in the chat, fire away. But yeah, top of the hour, myself and Drew Martin right here on WagerTalk TV.
Beautiful. Andrew, how was your weekend, my friend?
It was uneventful and stressful, I would say. I only had a few plays. Guys, it's weird for me. It's getting stressful. I'm getting back to the low volume approach, and we do shows all the time. I know you guys can speak to it as well with all the videos you guys do and being on so many shows. When you give out so many plays all week, and then you're trying to get into a low volume approach again with your plays with clients, you obviously want the free plays to do well. But at the same time, it kind of makes you mad when they do really, really well and you didn't give them out to clients. But anyway, guys, it's good to be here with you. But that's a real frustrating part for me right now. Like seeing so many plays. I'm on puck time every day, guys, but I just can't give out 5 or 6 hockey picks a day type of thing.
Yeah, it's so well said. It kills me when that happens. And it happens a lot in my hockey. Anyway, Andrew, speaking of hockey, you've got a futures bet. Let's start there. No follow-ups from Teddy. He'll go straight into tonight's game.
Well, I'm looking at the New Jersey Devils in the Eastern Conference and the Metropolitan Division to make the playoffs here this season, guys, at -115 odds. You can get some better prices across the board at different shops. Back on January 2nd, this team was upwards as -250. I mean, you can get you were getting really high prices on them. It's getting lower. They're about the middle of the pack as far as strength of schedule remaining for the second half of the season. But for me, this is a team that's played very poorly throughout the season. They've had a ton of injuries, and yet they're hovering just outside a playoff spot right now, competing with teams like the Islanders, the Pittsburgh Penguins, teams that I simply don't think will squeak into the playoffs. When you have a player like Jack Hughes injured for a large portion of this first half of the season, Dougie Hamilton, an all-star defenseman for the New Jersey Devils, injured for a large portion of the first half of this season, Eric Holla not out there for them. Guys, I'm impressed they are where they are at this point in the season with the injuries they've had to deal with. The way I look at it is we're getting a great number on a team that just maybe a month and a half ago, the price was way higher. And I love their schedule, especially out the All-Star break. they've got a very favorable schedule they can take advantage of. And their power play is only going to get better the healthier they get. So when I look across the Metropolitan Division, I feel like we have overachieving teams. Certain teams like the Washington Capitals, who they will play a couple times in the second half of the season, they're going to fall off big time. They're just overstepping their advanced metrics. So I think this Devils team is a big buy on team for the second half of the season. I do believe they will be in the postseason. And you got to love you're getting a minus 115 price when just 4 weeks ago, they were close to minus 225.
New Jersey Devils to make the playoffs. Andrew McInnis says now's the time to strike on that wager. Bryan Leonard talked about Nashville and Ottawa earlier in the show, talking about the side. He made a case for the Predators in that ball game. You're going to talk about the total in tonight's game, looking at 6.5 for the full game. You're interested in a team total here. What are we going to do? Ottawa and Nashville.
So, Teddy, I think this is a really good example of why sometimes, two cappers talking about the same game can still work. I think the viewers and listeners can still be intrigued by this, although we're covering the same game. I thought Bryan hit it right on the head when he mentioned Nashville wins correlates with the under, Ottawa wins correlates with the over. We have seen 7 straight unders for the Nashville Predators, and 7 of their last 10 games for the Senators have gone up and over the total. Now, this is a Senators team, guys. It seems like every single year they do the exact same thing, where they pretty much get themselves so far out of playoff contention that no matter what they do in the second half of the season, they can't make the playoffs, and then they go on a run. They start playing better. And the thing about them right now, they're actually, doing pretty well as far as their advanced scoring metrics, expected goal numbers. Their defense is what's holding them back. When I take a look at their players and their lineup, with getting Pinto back, having Batherson, having Kachuk, having Stützle, some of these guys can take advantage of slower paced teams like the Nashville Predators. And when I look at team totals, I like getting plus money. You can get upwards from plus 105 all the way to plus 120 at some shops here with this one. This might shock some people, might not. 10 straight wins for the Ottawa Senators. They have reached at least 4 goals. Some of those 5, some of those 6, some of those even 7 goals. So I am not worrying about the defense of the Senators tonight. I'm not worried about the goaltending, because if I was betting the money line, I certainly would be. I'm betting on this team that I do think will win to reach the 4-goal mark, which they've done in 10 straight victories. Nashville, to me, I could see them being a little checked out as the All-Star break approaches. For Ottawa, I feel like they're going to be successful tonight and get the job done. Hey, Prez, I see that motion from you, so I'm going to call you out. I'm sitting behind the scenes. I don't know how many times you asked Bryan Power a question and then answered it yourself for like 5 minutes. So, hey, I see you looking at me. Bryan, how can you possibly think that way? Well, I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't think that way. Bryan was looking at you, waiting for the time to answer.
Imagine being my wife.
I don't want to imagine that. I don't want to imagine that.
Yeah.
Andrew, we got 30 seconds.
Being your wife is like being a Lions fan today, but every day.
Guys, I know it's a great day at the website, obviously, with the Fill Your Cart special, Cart 25. Huge opportunity to take advantage of all kinds of different packages available. But I do have a huge promo code that expires today, and that is CUP150. CUP150 takes $150 off the rest of my NHL season. That includes the playoffs. Also, future bets, props, sides, totals, team totals, everything. $150 off. CUP150. Thanks a lot, guys.
Andrew McInnis, everyone. What a pleasure. What a show. Lots of fun. We learned that Teddy has a deep hatred towards fandom. We also learned that I'm rolling in college basketball, NBA, and NHL. We also learned that we have a promo code, CART25. It expires tonight, midnight PST. Take advantage of that. 25% off of anything you put in your shopping cart. Theodore, no daily presidential address today. We will have a penalty box segment. Guys, check that out. I will be giving out 1 NHL and 1 NBA play. My brother, take us home.
Sure. Stay tuned for the opening line report. Drew Martin and myself are going to break down the big game, Super Bowl 58, 15 minutes from now, actually 14 minutes from now, right here on this channel, WagerTalk TV. And of course, Lawrence and I will be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon for you back east. Between now and tomorrow's show,